Have you ever felt like there's something profound missing from your life? Something that no amount of success, relationships, or material possessions can fill? That unexplainable void that seems to whisper from the depths of your soul, calling you towards something greater than yourself. What if I told you that this restless longing isn't a sign of weakness or incompleteness, but actually the most sacred part of your human experience? Deep within every single person who has ever walked this earth lies an ancient yearning, a divine hunger that has been placed there intentionally, drawing you toward a transformation so powerful it can reshape every aspect of your existence. This isn't about religion as you might know it. This isn't about following rules or conforming to traditions. This is about awakening to a reality that has always been there, waiting patiently for you to recognize it. Has this ever happened to you? You're going through your daily routine, and suddenly you feel this overwhelming sense that you're capable of so much more, that there's an untapped power within you, just beneath the surface, ready to emerge. You're not imagining things. That inner voice, that gentle pull towards something transcendent, that feeling that you were made for greatness, it's all absolutely real. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because the truth is, you are not alone in this journey. Right now, in this very moment, there exists within you an immortal presence, a divine force that has been with you since before your first breath and will remain long after your last. This presence isn't distant or unreachable. It's not something you need to earn through years of study or perfect behavior. It's already there, pulsing with infinite potential, ready to work miracles through your thoughts, transform your words into instruments of healing, and turn your everyday actions into expressions of divine love. The question isn't whether this power exists. The question is whether you're ready to acknowledge it and allow it to flow through you. Stay with me until the end, because what we're exploring together goes far beyond positive thinking or self-improvement techniques. This is about remembering who you truly are at the deepest level of your being. You weren't created to live a mediocre existence, settling for whatever life throws your way. You weren't designed to struggle alone, carrying burdens that were never meant for you to bear. Every moment of confusion, every season of difficulty, every time you felt lost or overwhelmed, all of it has been preparing you for this awakening. The challenges you've faced haven't been random accidents or cruel twists of fate. They've been the very instruments used to crack open your heart, to create space for something magnificent to enter. This teaching you're receiving right now is not a coincidence. It's a divine appointment, a call to awaken from the spiritual slumber that has kept humanity bound for far too long. You were created to reflect divine perfection in every aspect of your life, in your relationships, your work, your dreams, your struggles, and your victories. Every cell in your body, every thought in your mind, every beat of your heart is designed to be a channel for the sacred. The ancient mystics knew this secret. The greatest spiritual teachers throughout history have pointed toward this same truth. And now, in this moment, you're being invited to step into this reality for yourself. What you're about to learn will challenge everything you thought you knew about spirituality, about God, and most importantly, about the incredible potential that lies dormant within you, waiting to be unleashed. The truth that's been hidden from most of humanity is staggering in its simplicity. Since the very beginning of time, since the first breath of creation itself, there has been an unbreakable desire flowing from the heart of the divine directly toward you. Not toward humanity as a general concept, not toward some distant crowd of people, but specifically toward you, reading these words right now. This isn't abstract theology or philosophical speculation. This is the most practical, life-changing reality you could ever encounter. Every major spiritual breakthrough throughout history, every moment when someone's life was completely transformed, every instance where the impossible became possible, it all stems from this one fundamental truth. The source of all existence is actively, persistently, lovingly trying to establish direct communication with your soul. Think about the profound implications of this for a moment. Every morning when you wake up, every decision you face, every challenge that seems insurmountable, every dream that feels too big to achieve, none of it is meant to be navigated alone. Behind the scenes of your everyday reality, there's this constant, gentle invitation being offered to you, a divine conversation that transcends words, a guidance system more sophisticated than anything human technology could ever create. But here's where most people get confused, and this is the hidden truth that changes everything. This divine communication doesn't come through the channels you might expect. It doesn't arrive as a booming voice from the clouds or dramatic supernatural interventions. Instead, it manifests as something far more intimate and powerful, a presence that works from the inside out, transforming your very essence while respecting your freedom to choose. Now, I want to go even deeper into this reality because what you're about to understand will shift your entire perspective on how change actually happens in your life. This divine presence that seeks to communicate with you operates through what ancient wisdom calls the Holy Spirit, but not in the way most people imagine. This isn't some distant, judgmental force waiting to punish your mistakes or demand religious performance from you. The Holy Spirit represents something revolutionary, power that operates without violence, wisdom that flows without pride, gentleness that contains no weakness whatsoever. Imagine a fire that doesn't destroy, but purifies, a strength that doesn't dominate, but liberates, a love that doesn't possess, but transforms. This is the force that wants to work through your life, reshaping everything from your thought patterns to your daily decisions. This completely reframes how transformation actually occurs. Most people exhaust themselves trying to change through willpower alone, forcing themselves into new habits, fighting against their old patterns with sheer determination. But what if real change happens when you stop fighting and start allowing? What if the most profound transformations in your life are meant to come not from your effort, but from your openness to let this divine presence work through you? Consider how this impacts every area of your existence, your relationships, your career, your health, your finances, your deepest dreams. All of it can become a canvas for this sacred collaboration. When you understand that you're not meant to figure everything out on your own, when you realize there's this infinite intelligence available to guide your steps, everything shifts. Your mindset moves from struggle to flow, from anxiety to trust, from limitation to possibility. The journey of awakening to this reality isn't about becoming someone different. It's about discovering who you've always been, beneath the layers of doubt, fear, and conditioning. It's about remembering that you were designed to be a channel for something magnificent, a living expression of divine creativity in human form. This revelation has the power to impact not just your personal life, but everyone around you. When you begin operating from this place of divine connection, people notice. There's something different about your presence. Your words carry more weight. Your actions create ripple effects that extend far beyond what you can see. Write in the comments, "I'm ready for this transformation," if this resonates with something deep inside you. What strikes me most about this divine invitation is how completely it contradicts everything our performance-driven culture teaches us. We've been conditioned to believe that we need to earn love, prove our worth, achieve certain milestones before we're qualified for anything meaningful. But here's the revolutionary truth that changes the entire game. The divine presence doesn't seek perfect people, it seeks willing people. This revelation alone has the power to transform your entire relationship with spirituality and personal growth. Every wound you carry, every fear that keeps you awake at night, every moment of loneliness that makes you question your value, these aren't disqualifications from divine connection. They're actually the exact places where sacred transformation wants to take root. Your brokenness isn't a barrier. It's fertile ground. Think about the profound implications of this mindset shift. That anxiety you struggle with, it can become the birthplace of unshakable peace. That relationship wound that still hurts, it can transform into a source of healing compassion for others. That financial stress that overwhelms you, it can become the catalyst for discovering abundance beyond your current understanding. The very experiences you've been trying to hide or fix become the doorways through which divine gifts enter your life. This completely reframes how we approach personal development and spiritual growth. Instead of trying to eliminate your struggles, you begin to understand them as invitations. Instead of viewing your imperfections as problems to solve, you start recognizing them as opportunities for divine collaboration. Your willingness becomes more valuable than your worthiness, your openness more important than your achievements. The behind-the-scenes reality of how this works is fascinating. When you stop demanding perfection from yourself and instead offer your authentic, messy, beautifully human experience to this divine partnership, something extraordinary happens. You become a vessel through which specific gifts can flow, not because you've earned them, but because you've created space for them. These aren't arbitrary spiritual concepts or abstract religious ideas. They're practical, life-changing capacities that have been documented and experienced throughout human history. Ancient wisdom traditions have identified 7 core expressions of divine presence that can manifest through willing hearts. Each one represents a different aspect of how the sacred wants to work through your daily decisions, relationships, and challenges. The first of these gifts transforms how you see everything around you. It's not just intelligence or education, it's a way of perceiving reality that cuts through confusion and sees the deeper truth in every situation. When this gift activates in your life, decisions that once paralyzed you become clear, relationships that once drained you find new balance, and paths that once seemed impossible begin to open. The second gift changes how you understand what's really happening beneath the surface of your experiences. It's like developing spiritual X-ray vision that allows you to recognize the hidden purpose in difficulties, the lessons embedded in challenges, and the growth opportunities disguised as setbacks. This transforms your entire journey from a series of random events into a meaningful unfolding. The third gift revolutionizes your decision-making process. Instead of agonizing over choices or second-guessing yourself constantly, you develop an inner guidance system that operates with quiet certainty. It's not about hearing voices or receiving dramatic signs. It's about accessing a deeper wisdom that knows the right path, even when your logical mind feels uncertain. The fourth gift provides the inner strength to keep moving forward when everything around you seems to be falling apart. It's not about becoming emotionally numb or developing a thick skin. It's about discovering an unshakable foundation that remains steady regardless of external circumstances. What's remarkable about these divine gifts is that they operate on a completely different paradigm than anything our achievement-oriented society teaches us. Most people approach personal development like collecting trophies, accumulating skills, certifications, and abilities to display their worth or gain an advantage over others. But these sacred capacities work in the exact opposite way. They're not meant to be possessed or hoarded. They're tools designed to flow through you toward healing, love, and service. This fundamental shift in mindset changes everything about how transformation actually occurs in your life. When you receive a gift from the divine realm, it doesn't belong to you in the traditional sense. You become its steward, its channel, its living expression in the world. The moment you try to use these gifts for personal glory or selfish advantage, they begin to fade. But when you allow them to flow freely toward blessing others, they multiply exponentially. This creates a beautiful paradox that reveals the hidden truth behind authentic spiritual growth. The more you give away what you've received, the more you actually possess. The more you use these gifts to serve Others, the stronger they become within you. It's like having a flame that grows brighter every time you use it to light another candle rather than diminishing. The first and most foundational of these gifts operates at the level of perception itself. This isn't about becoming smarter in the conventional sense or accumulating more information. It's about developing the ability to see reality through a completely different lens, one that reveals the deeper truth hidden beneath surface appearances. When this gift begins to awaken in your life, it's like switching from black and white television to high-definition color. Everything becomes more vivid, more meaningful, more interconnected. This transformed way of seeing impacts every single decision you make, every relationship you navigate, every challenge you face. Instead of being limited to your own perspective, educated guesses, and past experiences, you begin to access a wisdom that transcends human understanding. It's not about becoming psychic or mystical in some dramatic way. It's about developing an inner knowing that operates with quiet certainty, even in complex situations. The journey of awakening to this divine perspective often begins during moments of confusion or crisis. You find yourself facing a situation where your normal problem-solving abilities feel inadequate, where logic alone isn't providing clear answers, where the stakes feel too high to guess wrong. In these moments, something deeper begins to stir. You start to sense that there's more information available than what meets the eye, more wisdom accessible than what your education provided. This gift transforms how you approach relationships, revealing the motivations and needs behind people's actions rather than just reacting to their behavior. It changes how you make career decisions, helping you see opportunities and paths that others might miss entirely. It revolutionizes how you handle conflict, allowing you to address root causes rather than just symptoms. Most importantly, it reshapes your understanding of your own life purpose, revealing the unique contribution you're meant to make in the world. The development of this divine discernment doesn't happen through study or practice in the conventional sense. It emerges through surrender, through acknowledging the limitations of your own understanding and creating space for something greater to operate. It grows through humility, through admitting when you don't have all the answers and being willing to receive guidance from beyond your current knowledge. What's fascinating about this process is how it begins to influence not just major life decisions, but the smallest daily choices. You start to sense which conversations will be life-giving and which will drain your energy. You develop an intuition about timing, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to wait. Your ability to read situations becomes more accurate, not through cynicism or manipulation, but through genuine insight into what's really happening beneath the surface. The most profound transformations in life often happen so quietly that you almost miss them entirely. While the world celebrates dramatic breakthroughs and sudden revelations, true divine wisdom operates like morning light, gradually illuminating a landscape. You don't notice the exact moment when darkness gives way to dawn, but suddenly everything becomes visible, clear, and navigable. This is the hidden truth about how real change occurs in your life. The wisdom that transforms everything doesn't announce itself with fanfare or demand recognition. It simply begins to shift how you perceive, understand, and respond to every situation you encounter. One day, you realize that decisions that once tortured you for weeks now feel obvious. Relationships that used to drain your energy have found new balance. Problems that seemed impossible to solve have revealed unexpected solutions. The journey toward accessing this transformative wisdom requires a complete reversal of how most people approach learning and growth. Our educational system, professional development, and even most self-help approaches are built on the foundation of accumulating information, developing skills, and asserting control over outcomes. But divine wisdom operates on an entirely different principle that can feel counterintuitive at first. Instead of trying harder, you learn to surrender more completely. Instead of gathering more knowledge, you acknowledge what you don't know. Instead of forcing solutions, you create space for understanding to emerge. This isn't about becoming passive or giving up personal responsibility. It's about recognizing that there's an intelligence available to you that far exceeds the limitations of your individual perspective and experience. The moment you genuinely admit, "I don't know," in a situation that matters to you, something remarkable begins to happen. That admission isn't defeat. It's the doorway through which divine teaching can enter your consciousness. It's like removing the static that was blocking a clear radio signal. Suddenly, you're able to receive guidance that was always being transmitted but couldn't get through the noise of your assumptions and preconceptions. This process impacts every area of your decision-making journey. In your career, instead of frantically researching every angle and still feeling uncertain, you learn to create inner stillness and allow clarity to emerge. In relationships, rather than analyzing every conversation to death, you develop the ability to sense what's really being communicated beneath the words. In financial decisions, you begin to recognize opportunities and avoid pitfalls through an intuition that operates faster than logical analysis. What's fascinating about this shift is how it changes your relationship with uncertainty itself. Most people experience anxiety when they don't have all the answers, when the path forward isn't completely clear, when outcomes remain unknown. But when you're connected to divine wisdom, uncertainty becomes exciting rather than threatening. It becomes space for possibility rather than cause for worry. The behind-the-scenes reality of how this works is that you're tapping into an intelligence that sees the bigger picture while you're focused on individual puzzle pieces. It's like having access to the overview of a maze while you're walking through it, or seeing the entire chessboard while your opponent is focused on single moves. This perspective doesn't eliminate challenges or guarantee that everything will be easy, but it provides context that transforms how you navigate difficulties. The cultivation of this wisdom happens through what might seem like inaction, but is actually the most profound form of action possible. When you choose to pause before reacting, to listen before speaking, to consider before deciding, you're creating the conditions for divine guidance to influence your choices. When you resist the urge to have an immediate opinion about every situation and instead hold space for deeper understanding to develop, you're practicing the art of divine receptivity. This approach revolutionizes how you handle conflict, make major life transitions, parent your children, navigate health challenges, and pursue your deepest dreams. It doesn't make you indecisive or passive. Instead, it makes your actions more precise, more timely, and more effective because they're informed by wisdom that transcends human limitation. The cultivation of divine wisdom follows a pattern that's completely different from traditional learning methods, and understanding this difference is crucial for your transformation journey. While conventional education relies on accumulating facts and developing analytical skills, divine wisdom grows through practices that might seem counterproductive to our efficiency-obsessed culture. Yet these seemingly simple approaches unlock access to insights that no amount of research or analysis could provide. The foundation of this cultivation begins with cultivating authentic humility, not the self-deprecating kind that diminishes your worth, but the kind that honestly acknowledges the vastness of what you don't yet understand. This humility creates the inner space necessary for divine wisdom to take root. When you approach life's challenges with the mindset of a student rather than an expert, you become available to receive guidance from sources beyond your current knowledge base. The practice of open prayer becomes your primary tool for developing this receptivity. This isn't the kind of prayer that presents God with detailed requests or tries to convince the divine to align with your plans. Instead, it's the vulnerable act of exposing your uncertainty, your need for guidance, your willingness to be taught. When you pray with genuine openness, saying something like, "Show me what I need to understand about this situation," you're creating a direct channel for divine wisdom to flow through your consciousness. Silence plays an equally crucial role in this developmental process. In our information-saturated world, we've become addicted to constant input: news, social media, podcasts, conversations, entertainment. But divine wisdom requires spaciousness to emerge. Regular periods of intentional silence allow your mind to settle, your emotions to stabilize, and your spiritual sensitivity to increase. It's in these quiet moments that the subtle voice of divine guidance becomes audible above the noise of daily life. The element of trust might be the most challenging aspect of this journey for many people. Divine illumination rarely happens according to our timeline or in the dramatic ways we might expect. It unfolds gradually, like watching a photograph develop in slow motion. Trusting this process means believing that guidance is coming even when you can't see evidence of it yet. Maintaining faith that clarity will emerge even when confusion seems to dominate your experience. As this foundation of wisdom begins to establish itself in your life, something even more profound starts to awaken. Beyond just receiving guidance for your decisions, you begin to develop what could be described as spiritual vision, the ability to perceive the deeper story that's unfolding beneath the surface of visible events. This represents a quantum leap in your consciousness, moving from simply navigating life to actually understanding its hidden meanings and purposes. This deeper level of perception transforms how you interpret everything that happens to you and around you. That job loss that initially devastated you begins to reveal itself as the catalyst that launched you toward your true calling. The relationship that ended painfully starts to make sense as the necessary clearing that created space for authentic love to enter your life. The health challenge that frightened you becomes recognizable as the wake-up call that realigned your priorities and deepened your appreciation for life itself. The art of perceiving these hidden truths requires a fundamental shift in how you approach your experiences. Instead of immediately categorizing events as good or bad, fortunate or unfortunate, you learn to hold space for deeper meaning to reveal itself. You begin to recognize that every situation contains multiple layers of significance, and the most important lessons often emerge from what initially appears to be setbacks or difficulties. This transformed perception impacts every relationship you navigate, every decision you face, every challenge that emerges in your path. You start to recognize the spiritual curriculum embedded in your daily experiences, understanding that life itself is your classroom, and every person you encounter is potentially a teacher, bringing you exactly what you need for your continued growth and awakening. Now, I want to explore how this deeper understanding completely revolutionizes your relationship with adversity and transforms what most people consider obstacles into doorways for breakthrough. Write in the comments, "I see the hidden story," if you're beginning to recognize the deeper spiritual meaning in your life experiences. The revolutionary impact of this deeper understanding becomes most evident in how it transforms your relationships and your response to difficult people. When you develop the ability to see beneath surface behaviors to the root causes driving them, everything changes. You're no longer reacting to what people do. You're responding to who they are at the deepest level, including the wounds they carry and the fears that motivate their actions. This shift in perception is like developing X-ray vision for human behavior. While others might see someone's aggression and respond with defensiveness or counterattack, you begin to recognize the fear that's driving that aggression. Where others encounter someone's arrogance and feel intimidated or angry, you start to perceive the deep insecurity that requires such elaborate protection. When faced with someone's manipulation or control, instead of feeling victimized, you recognize the profound powerlessness they're trying to mask. This doesn't mean you become naive or allow others to mistreat you. Instead, you develop the ability to respond to the truth of what's happening rather than getting caught up in the drama of surface behaviors. You can set boundaries with compassion, speak truth without cruelty, and maintain your own well-being while still seeing others through eyes of understanding rather than judgment. The transformation this creates in your daily interactions is profound. Conversations that once left you drained or frustrated begin to feel different because you're no longer taking other people's behavior personally. You realize that how others treat you has far more to do with their internal state than with anything you've done wrong. This understanding liberates you from the exhausting cycle of trying to manage other people's emotions or prove your worth through their approval. What's remarkable about this gift is how it extends beyond just understanding people's current behavior to actually recognizing potential before it manifests. You begin to see the seeds of greatness in people who haven't discovered it themselves yet. You recognize healing potential in relationships that others might write off as hopeless. You sense breakthrough moments approaching before the external evidence appears, like detecting spring's arrival while winter still seems firmly established. This predictive aspect of divine understanding impacts every area of your decision-making journey. In business relationships, you develop an intuition about which partnerships will flourish and which ones carry hidden complications. In parenting, you begin to recognize your children's emerging gifts and challenges before they fully manifest, allowing you to provide guidance and support at exactly the right moments. In your own personal growth, you start to sense when major shifts are approaching, even when your current circumstances seem static. The behind-the-scenes reality of how this understanding develops is fascinating. It's not something you can force or manufacture through psychological analysis or studying human behavior patterns. Instead, it emerges as a natural byproduct of your own healing and spiritual growth. As you become more aware of your own hidden motivations, unconscious fears, and protective mechanisms, you automatically become more sensitive to recognizing these same patterns in others. This creates a beautiful cycle of mutual healing. The more you understand others without judgment, the more you understand yourself without condemnation. The more compassion you extend to others' struggles, the more grace you're able to offer your own imperfections. The more you see people as wounded souls seeking love rather than enemies to be defeated, the more you recognize your own fundamental need for connection and acceptance. The practical impact of this transformation touches every aspect of your relationships. Family dynamics that have been strained for years begin to shift as you stop trying to change others and start seeing them with divine perspective. Workplace conflicts become opportunities for deeper understanding rather than battles to be won. Even casual interactions with strangers carry more depth and meaning because you're encountering their soul rather than just their personality. This understanding also revolutionizes how you handle criticism, rejection, and conflict. When someone attacks your character or questions your decisions, instead of immediately defending yourself or launching a counterattack, you're able to recognize the pain or fear that's driving their response. This doesn't make their behavior acceptable, but it does free you from taking it personally and allows you to respond from wisdom rather than wounded emotion. The development of this profound understanding doesn't happen through intense study or complex techniques. Instead, it grows through three surprisingly simple yet transformative practices that anyone can begin implementing immediately. The first involves learning to contemplate rather than merely react to your experiences. When something challenging happens, instead of immediately jumping to conclusions or emotional responses, you pause and create space for deeper insight to emerge. This contemplative approach transforms your entire relationship with life's events. Rather than being tossed around by circumstances, you become like a wise observer who understands that every situation contains multiple layers of meaning waiting to be discovered. You begin to ask different questions, not just, how do I fix this, but what is this trying to teach me? Not just, why is this happening to me, but how might this be serving my highest good in ways I can't yet see? The second practice involves releasing your attachment to judgment, which might be one of the most liberating shifts you'll ever experience. This doesn't mean becoming passive or failing to discern right from wrong. Instead, it means approaching people and situations with curiosity rather than immediate categorization. When you encounter behavior that triggers you, instead of rushing to label it as good or bad, you hold space for understanding to develop. This non-judgmental stance creates room for wisdom to flow because judgment closes doors while openness invites revelation. Every time you choose to suspend your immediate opinion and remain curious about what's really happening, you're creating the conditions for divine insight to emerge. This approach revolutionizes your relationships, your decision-making process, and your ability to navigate complex situations with grace. The third element involves maintaining what could be called the learner's heart, approaching every experience with genuine humility about what you don't yet know. This doesn't mean diminishing your intelligence or experience. It means recognizing that reality contains depths you haven't fully explored, that other people carry wisdom you haven't accessed, and that every situation offers opportunities for growth you might not immediately recognize. When you combine contemplation, non-judgment, and learner's humility, something remarkable begins to happen. You start receiving what can only be described as divine counsel, precise guidance that emerges from beyond your own thinking and knowledge. This isn't about becoming psychic or hearing audible voices. It's about accessing a quality of inner knowing that operates with quiet certainty, even in complex situations. This divine counsel manifests as what you might call the silence that speaks. In moments when you genuinely need direction, when the stakes feel high and the path forward seems unclear, you learn to create sacred stillness within yourself. In that stillness, something beyond your conscious mind begins to communicate, not through dramatic supernatural intervention, but through a gentle clarity that feels both surprising and completely natural. The guidance that emerges through this process carries a distinctive quality that differentiates it from your own mental analysis or emotional impulses. It comes with a deep peace that doesn't depend on understanding all the details. It feels spacious rather than anxious, integrating rather than fragmenting. When you receive genuine divine counsel, you know it not because it makes perfect logical sense, but because it resonates with a truth that your soul recognizes immediately. This form of guidance operates with remarkable precision, offering exactly what you need for specific situations rather than vague generalities. It might come as a clear sense of timing, knowing when to speak, and when to remain silent, when to act, and when to wait. It might emerge as unexpected insight about a relationship, revealing approaches you hadn't considered. It could manifest as sudden clarity about a career decision, financial choice, or family situation that had been causing you stress. The impact of accessing this divine counsel extends far beyond solving immediate problems. It fundamentally transforms your relationship with uncertainty and decision-making itself. Instead of being paralyzed by not knowing what to do, you develop confidence in your ability to receive guidance when you need it. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to figure everything out in advance, you learn to trust that clarity will come at the right moment. The quality of authentic divine guidance carries a signature that becomes unmistakable once you learn to recognize it. Unlike the urgent, demanding voice of fear that shouts for immediate attention, divine counsel emerges as a gentle whisper that brings profound certainty without creating anxiety. This distinction is crucial for your spiritual journey because learning to differentiate between these two sources of inner communication will transform every major decision you make. Fear operates like an aggressive salesperson, pressuring you with threats about what might happen if you don't act immediately. It presents worst-case scenarios, amplifies potential dangers, and creates a sense of urgency that makes clear thinking nearly impossible. When fear is driving your decision-making process, you feel compressed, anxious, and desperate to find relief from the pressure. The solutions that emerge from this state tend to be reactive rather than responsive, focused on avoiding pain rather than moving toward purpose. Divine counsel, by contrast, operates with infinite patience. It doesn't pressure you into hasty decisions or threaten consequences if you don't respond immediately. Instead, it creates spaciousness around your choices, allowing you to consider options without feeling rushed or panicked. When you're receiving authentic divine guidance, you experience what could be described as expansive peace, a sense that whatever decision you make from this place will ultimately serve your highest good. This peaceful quality of divine guidance extends beyond just feeling calm. It actually integrates different aspects of your situation in ways that fear-based thinking cannot achieve. Fear tends to fragment your perspective, causing you to focus obsessively on potential problems while losing sight of the bigger picture. Divine counsel, however, helps you see how various elements of your situation connect, how apparent obstacles might actually be opportunities, and how short-term challenges could serve long-term purposes. The integration that comes with divine guidance affects not just your mental understanding, but your emotional and physical state as well. When you're operating from authentic spiritual counsel, your body feels aligned rather than tense, your emotions remain stable rather than chaotic, and your thoughts flow clearly rather than racing in circles. This holistic harmony becomes one of the most reliable indicators that you're receiving genuine divine direction. The transformation in your decision-making mindset that occurs when you learn to recognize and trust divine counsel is profound. Instead of approaching choices with the desperate energy of someone trying to avoid making mistakes, you begin to approach decisions with the confident curiosity of someone who trusts that guidance will emerge when needed. This shift alone reduces the stress and anxiety that typically accompany important life choices. The behind-the-scenes reality of how divine counsel operates reveals why it's so effective compared to purely logical analysis. While your rational mind can only process information you already possess and consider possibilities you can currently imagine, divine guidance draws from a wisdom that transcends your individual knowledge and experience. It takes into account factors you haven't considered, timing you couldn't predict, and outcomes you couldn't anticipate. This expanded perspective doesn't mean divine counsel will always lead you toward the easiest path, but it will consistently guide you toward the path that serves your highest development and greatest contribution. Sometimes this means making choices that appear risky or unconventional from a worldly standpoint, but prove to be exactly right from a spiritual perspective. The practical impact of learning to distinguish divine guidance from fear-based thinking touches every area of your life. In relationships, you stop making decisions from the anxiety of losing someone's approval and start choosing actions that honor both your own integrity and their highest good. In career choices, you move beyond the fear of financial insecurity to recognize opportunities that align with your deeper purpose. In health decisions, you transcend the panic that often accompanies physical challenges and access wisdom about what your body truly needs for healing and vitality. The development of this discernment requires practice, but it's not complicated practice. It's simply a matter of pausing before making decisions and asking yourself whether the guidance you're receiving feels expansive or constrictive, peaceful or anxious, integrating or fragmenting. The more you practice this inner checking, the more sensitive you become to the distinctive qualities of authentic divine counsel. Now I want to explore how this divine guidance naturally leads to an unshakable inner strength that remains steady regardless of external circumstances. Write in the comments, "I choose peace over pressure," if you're learning to recognize the difference between divine guidance and fear-based thinking. The cultivation of this divine discernment happens through a practice that's beautifully simple yet profoundly transformative. Instead of immediately reaching out to friends, searching online forums, or analyzing endless possibilities when facing a decision, you learn to speak to God first. This isn't about following religious protocol. It's about establishing a direct connection with the source of all wisdom before allowing external voices to influence your thinking. This practice of consulting divine guidance before seeking human counsel creates a foundation of clarity that changes everything about how you navigate life's challenges. When you begin your decision-making process by creating sacred stillness and asking for divine direction, you establish an anchor point that remains steady regardless of how many different opinions or perspectives you encounter afterward. You're no longer at the mercy of whoever speaks loudest or most convincingly, because you've already touched base with the ultimate source of truth. The discipline of maintaining silence after prayer might be the most challenging aspect for people living in our instant gratification culture. We're conditioned to expect immediate answers, quick fixes, and rapid resolution to our questions. But divine counsel operates on a different timeline that often requires patient waiting for clarity to emerge. This waiting isn't passive, it's an active state of receptivity that creates space for divine wisdom to crystallize within your consciousness. During these periods of prayerful silence, something remarkable happens in your inner landscape. The mental chatter that normally dominates your thinking begins to settle. Emotional reactivity calms down, and a deeper awareness starts to surface. This isn't meditation in the Eastern sense, but a uniquely personal communion with divine intelligence that speaks your language and understands your specific situation with perfect precision. The guidance that emerges from this practice carries the distinctive quality of peaceful certainty that we discussed earlier. You don't have to force understanding or manufacture confidence. It arises naturally as you remain open and receptive. Sometimes the direction comes as a clear sense of what to do next. Other times it manifests as profound peace about remaining still and allowing circumstances to develop further before taking action. As you develop proficiency in receiving and following divine counsel, something even more powerful begins to awaken within you. The same divine presence that provides guidance also becomes a source of unshakable inner strength that sustains you through every challenge life presents. This isn't the kind of strength that comes from gritting your teeth and pushing through difficulties with sheer willpower. It's something far more profound and sustainable. True spiritual strength operates as divine presence rather than human resistance. Instead of hardening yourself against life's storms, you discover an inner stability that remains unmoved regardless of external circumstances. This strength doesn't come from your own resources or depend on your emotional state. It flows from the same infinite source that provides wisdom and counsel, available to you in unlimited supply whenever you need it. The transformation in your mindset that occurs when you access this divine strength is remarkable. Challenges that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable, not because they've become easier, but because you're no longer facing them with only your own limited resources. Financial pressures, relationship conflicts, health concerns, career uncertainties, all of these continue to exist, but your relationship to them changes fundamentally. This divine strength manifests differently than most people expect. It's not about becoming emotionally numb or developing a thick skin against life's difficulties. Instead, it's about discovering a place within yourself that remains peaceful and stable even when your emotions are stirred, your circumstances are challenging, or your future feels uncertain. It's like finding solid ground beneath shifting sand. The behind-the-scenes reality of how this strength operates reveals why it's so much more effective than trying to be strong through your own efforts. Human willpower eventually exhausts itself, emotional resilience has limits, and mental toughness can crack under enough pressure. But divine strength draws from an inexhaustible source that actually grows stronger under pressure, rather than weaker. This strength doesn't isolate you from feeling pain or shield you from experiencing difficulty. Instead, it provides the inner foundation that allows you to move through challenges without being destroyed by them, to feel emotions without being controlled by them, and to face uncertainty without being paralyzed by fear. The manifestation of true spiritual strength in your daily life creates a transformation that's both subtle and revolutionary. Unlike the brittle hardness that most people develop as protection against life's difficulties, divine strength operates through grace, a quality that allows you to remain flexible and responsive without becoming weak or compromised. This strength enables you to adapt to changing circumstances without losing your core identity, to face opposition without becoming defensive, and to maintain love even in challenging relationships. This grace-based approach to strength completely reframes how you handle conflict, disappointment, and adversity. When someone criticizes you unfairly, instead of either collapsing in hurt or responding with anger, you discover a third option: remaining centered and peaceful while still maintaining appropriate boundaries. When circumstances don't unfold according to your plans, rather than becoming bitter or desperate, you find yourself able to adjust your approach while maintaining trust in the ultimate goodness of your journey. The development of this divine strength happens not through dramatic spiritual experiences, but through seemingly ordinary daily practices that gradually build your capacity to access and rely on divine resources. The foundation of this development involves learning to genuinely accept what you cannot change, which sounds simple, but represents one of the most profound shifts in mindset you can make. This acceptance doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up your power to influence situations. Instead, it means recognizing the difference between what falls within your sphere of control and what belongs to a larger orchestration that you cannot manipulate. When you stop exhausting yourself trying to change things that are beyond your influence, you free up enormous amounts of energy that can be redirected toward areas where you can actually make a difference. The practice of praying when you don't feel like it might seem counterintuitive, but it's actually one of the most powerful ways to develop spiritual strength. When prayer feels dry, when you're angry with God, when you doubt that anyone is listening, these are precisely the moments when continuing to pray builds the inner muscle of faith. It's like physical exercise that becomes most effective when you push through the resistance rather than stopping when it feels difficult. This disciplined approach to spiritual practice creates a foundation that remains stable regardless of your emotional state or external circumstances. You begin to discover that your connection to divine strength doesn't depend on feeling spiritual or having everything figured out. It's available even when you're confused, hurting, or struggling with doubt. Perhaps the most challenging yet transformative practice involves learning to bless situations and people even when you're experiencing pain or difficulty. This doesn't mean pretending that everything is wonderful when it's not, or suppressing authentic emotions. Instead, it means choosing to speak words of blessing and possibility even when your immediate experience feels dark or hopeless. The behind-the-scenes impact of this practice is remarkable. When you bless rather than curse your circumstances, you're actually aligning yourself with creative divine energy rather than destructive forces. This alignment doesn't immediately change external situations, but it changes your relationship to them in ways that open new possibilities for resolution and growth. This approach transforms how you navigate workplace challenges, family tensions, health concerns, and financial pressures. Instead of being at the mercy of your circumstances, you discover that you can influence the energy around situations through your internal response to them. You begin to understand that while you can't control what happens to you, you have tremendous power over what happens through you as you respond to life's challenges. The cultivation of divine strength through these daily practices creates a ripple effect that extends far beyond your personal experience. People begin to notice something different about your presence. You become a stabilizing influence in chaotic situations, a source of calm wisdom during crisis, and a living demonstration that it's possible to maintain peace and love even under pressure. This strength doesn't make you immune to feeling pain or experiencing difficulty, but it provides an unshakable foundation that allows you to move through challenges without being destroyed by them. You discover that you can hold grief and joy simultaneously, feel anger without being consumed by it, and face uncertainty without being paralyzed by fear. This divine strength creates something remarkable in your life journey, the ability to move forward in alignment with your deepest purpose, even when fear is present, even when uncertainty clouds your path, even when your natural human instincts want to retreat to safety. The strength doesn't eliminate the trembling in your knees or the questions in your mind, but it provides an unshakable knowing that if you fall, you won't fall alone. There's a presence that will lift you, redirect you, and continue the work through you regardless of your human limitations. This transforms your entire relationship with risk and calling. Most people avoid pursuing their deepest dreams because they can't guarantee success, can't predict outcomes, can't eliminate the possibility of failure or embarrassment. But when you're connected to divine strength, you discover that the guarantee isn't about external success. It's about being held and guided, regardless of what happens. This shifts your focus from trying to control outcomes to simply being faithful to the next step that's being revealed to you. As this strength establishes itself in your life, something beautiful begins to happen. Your sensitivity to the divine presence starts expanding beyond moments of prayer or crisis into every aspect of your daily experience. You begin to develop what could be described as sacred vision, the ability to recognize divine intelligence and purpose operating through all of creation, not just in obviously spiritual contexts. This represents a profound shift in consciousness that bridges the artificial divide between the sacred and the secular, between the spiritual and the practical. Instead of compartmentalizing God into religious activities or special moments, you start recognizing divine fingerprints everywhere you look. The intricate design of a flower reveals the same creative intelligence that guides your personal transformation. The precise laws that govern planetary motion reflect the same order that orchestrates the perfect timing of events in your life. This expanded awareness doesn't make you less scientific or rational. It actually makes you more amazed by the intelligence behind natural laws and physical phenomena. When you understand that every atom contains divine information, every biological process reflects sacred wisdom, and every natural law demonstrates spiritual principles, the entire universe becomes your classroom, and every observation becomes an opportunity for deeper communion with divine truth. The transformation in your mindset that occurs through this sacred vision is profound. Work stops being merely secular activity and becomes an opportunity to participate in divine creativity. Parenting transforms from just raising children to shepherding souls on their spiritual journey. Even mundane tasks like cooking, cleaning, or commuting become opportunities to practice presence and recognize the sacred in the ordinary. This perspective revolutionizes how you approach learning and discovery. Whether you're studying biology, psychology, physics, or any other field of knowledge, you begin to see how every genuine discovery reveals another aspect of divine intelligence. Science stops being separate from spirituality and becomes another way of exploring the mind of God, expressed through natural laws and created order. The behind-the-scenes impact of this integrated worldview touches every decision you make and every relationship you navigate. When you recognize that divine presence permeates all of creation, you naturally treat everything with greater reverence. Your environmental consciousness deepens not from guilt or fear, but from awe at the interconnected web of divine creativity that sustains all life. Your professional life becomes infused with purpose as you recognize that your skills and talents are expressions of divine gifts meant to serve the larger tapestry of creation. Your relationships deepen as you see other people, not just as personalities to manage or enjoy, but as fellow expressions of divine consciousness on their own unique journey of awakening. This sacred vision also transforms how you handle practical challenges and everyday problems. Instead of seeing obstacles as random difficulties to overcome through human effort alone, you begin to recognize patterns, lessons, and growth opportunities that are perfectly designed for your continued development. Even mechanical failures, health issues, or financial pressures start to reveal their hidden curriculum. The cultivation of this divine recognition happens through conscious practice of what you might call sacred seeing. Throughout your day, you pause periodically to acknowledge the divine intelligence operating through whatever you're experiencing, the complexity of your own body systems, the precise timing of traffic lights, the perfect provision of oxygen in the atmosphere, the mysterious process by which thoughts become words. Now, I want to reveal how this recognition of divine presence in all creation naturally leads to the most beautiful expression of spiritual maturity. Write in the comments, "I see God everywhere," if you're beginning to recognize divine intelligence operating through all aspects of creation. The remarkable thing about developing this ability to recognize divine presence throughout creation is how it produces the exact opposite effect of what you might expect. Instead of making you feel spiritually superior or more enlightened than others, this awareness generates profound humility and reverence. The more you see divine intelligence operating everywhere, the more you realize how little you actually understand about the magnificent complexity and purpose behind everything that exists. This reverence transforms your daily experience into a continuous journey of discovery. Each morning becomes an opportunity to encounter divine wisdom through whatever experiences the day brings. Every conversation carries potential lessons, every challenge contains hidden curriculum, and every ordinary moment offers glimpses into eternal truths. You stop approaching life as someone who has figured things out and start living as an eternal student in the greatest classroom ever created. This shift in mindset revolutionizes how you navigate both success and failure, both pleasant and difficult experiences. When something wonderful happens, instead of just enjoying it or taking credit for it, you find yourself asking what this blessing is meant to teach you about divine goodness and provision. When something challenging occurs, rather than just trying to fix it or escape from it, you become curious about what growth opportunity or character development might be embedded within the difficulty. The cultivation of this sacred awareness happens through what could be called reverent observation, approaching every experience with the assumption that it contains divine instruction waiting to be discovered. This doesn't mean becoming overly analytical or turning every moment into a spiritual lesson to be decoded. Instead, it means maintaining a gentle curiosity about the deeper purposes and patterns that might be operating beneath the surface of your daily experiences. This practice transforms mundane activities into opportunities for spiritual insight. Standing in line at the grocery store becomes a chance to observe human nature and practice patience. Dealing with a difficult coworker becomes a laboratory for learning about compassion and boundary setting. Even mechanical problems with your car can become invitations to examine your relationship with control and trust. The integration of reason with faith represents one of the most important aspects of this spiritual development. Too often, people create an artificial separation between intellectual honesty and spiritual openness, as if you have to choose between being smart and being spiritual. But the recognition of divine presence in all creation actually enhances both your rational capabilities and your spiritual sensitivity. When you join reason with faith, you bring both critical thinking and open-hearted receptivity to every situation you encounter. You don't abandon logic or become gullible, but you also don't limit yourself to only what can be measured or proven through current scientific methods. You become someone who can appreciate the precision of mathematical laws while also remaining open to mysteries that transcend current understanding. This integration impacts every area of your decision-making journey. In your career, you can analyze market trends and business strategies while also remaining sensitive to divine timing and purpose. In relationships, you can use psychological insights and communication skills while also recognizing the spiritual dimensions of human connection. In health decisions, you can embrace medical knowledge and treatment options while also acknowledging the role of faith, prayer, and divine healing. The behind-the-scenes effect of this balanced approach is that you become more effective in practical matters rather than less. When you're operating from both human wisdom and divine guidance, when you're using both your mind and your spirit, when you're applying both learned skills and sacred intuition, you have access to resources that purely secular or purely mystical approaches cannot provide. This synthesis creates a unique form of intelligence that recognizes patterns others might miss, identifies opportunities that conventional thinking overlooks, and find solutions that emerge from the intersection of practical knowledge and spiritual insight. You begin to see connections between seemingly unrelated events, recognize timing that appears perfect beyond coincidence, and discover resources appearing exactly when they're needed. The transformation this brings to your daily life is subtle but profound. You find yourself constantly amazed by the intelligence and care that seems to be orchestrating your experiences. You develop deep gratitude, not just for obviously good things, but for the entire tapestry of your life, including its challenges and complexities. This growing awareness and reverence for divine presence operating throughout creation naturally gives birth to something extraordinarily beautiful and revolutionary, a quality that could be described as celestial tenderness. This isn't the kind of gentleness that emerges from weakness or people-pleasing, but rather a profound softness that flows from hearts that have been completely conquered by divine love. When you truly understand that you are beloved at the deepest level of your being, when you experience the infinite tenderness with which God regards you, something within you begins to overflow toward everyone you encounter. This divine tenderness operates as a force that literally disarms the world's harsh systems and defensive mechanisms. It's remarkable to witness how aggression melts in the presence of authentic gentleness, how criticism loses its power when met with genuine understanding, and how even the most hardened hearts begin to soften when they encounter someone who consistently responds with love rather than defensiveness or counterattack. The transformation this creates in your relationships and daily interactions is nothing short of miraculous. Instead of matching energy for energy, responding to harshness with harshness, to judgment with judgment, to anger with anger, you discover an alternative approach that consistently produces better outcomes while preserving your own inner peace. This doesn't mean becoming passive, weak, or allowing others to mistreat you. Instead, it means responding from a place of such inner security that you don't need to defend yourself through aggression. What makes this divine tenderness so powerful is how it combines gentleness with unwavering strength. You become simultaneously soft and firm, yielding and immovable, compassionate and clear about boundaries. This paradoxical combination emerges because your actions are no longer driven by calculated strategies for getting what you want or protecting yourself from what you fear. Instead, they flow from love's natural impulse, a spontaneous responsiveness that always seeks the highest good for everyone involved. This shift in motivation changes everything about how you navigate difficult relationships and challenging situations. When someone treats you unfairly, instead of immediately strategizing how to defend yourself or get revenge, you find yourself naturally responding in ways that address their underlying pain or fear. When faced with conflict, rather than calculating the most effective argument to win, you discover responses that seek understanding and resolution rather than victory. The behind-the-scenes impact of operating from this place of divine tenderness is profound. People begin to trust you in ways they haven't trusted others because they sense that you're not trying to manipulate or use them. Conversations become deeper and more meaningful because others feel safe to be vulnerable around your gentle strength. Even your presence in tense situations becomes a stabilizing influence that helps others access their own better nature. This divine tenderness doesn't develop through trying to be nice or forcing yourself to act loving when you don't feel it. Instead, it emerges as a natural expression of your growing connection to divine love. The more you experience God's unconditional acceptance of you, including your flaws, mistakes, and imperfections, the more that same accepting love begins to flow through you toward others. The transformation in your mindset that occurs through this process is remarkable. You stop seeing other people as obstacles to overcome, competitors to defeat, or threats to defend against. Instead, you begin recognizing everyone as fellow souls on their own journey of growth and awakening, each carrying their own wounds and struggling with their own challenges. This shift in perception naturally generates compassion rather than judgment, patience rather than irritation, and blessing rather than criticism. This approach revolutionizes how you handle workplace dynamics, family tensions, parenting challenges, and community involvement. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to control other people's behavior or reactions, you focus on maintaining your own connection to divine love and allowing that love to influence every interaction. The results are often surprising. Situations that seemed hopeless begin to shift. Relationships that appeared broken start to heal, and people who seemed unreachable begin to respond. The practice of divine tenderness also transforms your relationship with yourself. The same gentle strength that you extend to others becomes available for dealing with your own mistakes, limitations, and areas of growth. Self-criticism and harsh internal dialogue begin to dissolve as you learn to treat yourself with the same compassion you're offering to others. The cultivation of this divine tenderness happens through practical choices that completely revolutionize your daily interactions and internal responses. Every time you encounter a situation that triggers your natural tendency to judge, criticize, or condemn, you have an opportunity to practice a different response, choosing blessing instead. This isn't about pretending that problematic behavior is acceptable or suppressing your ability to discern right from wrong. It's about speaking words of possibility and potential even when current reality looks disappointing or frustrating. This practice of choosing blessing over judgment creates a transformation that goes far deeper than just being nice to people. When you consistently speak words of life and hope rather than criticism and condemnation, you're actually aligning yourself with creative divine energy rather than destructive forces. This alignment doesn't just change the atmosphere around you, it changes something fundamental within your own consciousness and opens pathways for divine power to work through your words and presence. The maintenance of tenderness amid contempt represents perhaps the most challenging yet transformative aspect of this spiritual development. When others treat you with disrespect, mockery, or outright hostility, every instinct screams for you to protect yourself through defensive reactions or counterattacks. But divine tenderness offers a third option that transcends both weakness and aggression, remaining soft-hearted without becoming naive, maintaining compassion without enabling destructive behavior. This approach requires tremendous inner strength because it means absorbing negative energy without returning it, blessing those who curse you without expecting anything in return, and maintaining faith in people's ultimate goodness, even when their current behavior suggests otherwise. The power of this response lies not in changing other people's hearts directly, but in refusing to let their darkness contaminate your own light. The delight in serving God that emerges from this practice transforms the entire motivation behind your actions. Instead of serving from duty, obligation, or the need to earn approval, you begin to serve from joy, from the natural overflow of a heart that has been touched by divine love. This shift, from reluctant obedience to joyful participation, changes everything about your spiritual journey and makes even challenging service feel like privilege rather than burden. As this divine tenderness matures within you, something unexpected and profound begins to happen. The same love that makes you gentle toward others also awakens an overwhelming sense of awe toward the source of all love. This isn't the fearful cowering that many people associate with religious reverence, but rather a fiery recognition of divine majesty that leaves you breathless with wonder rather than paralyzed with terror. This reverent awe represents one of the most misunderstood aspects of spiritual development, largely because the word fear has been so corrupted by human experiences of intimidation and threat. But the reverence that emerges from genuine spiritual awakening is entirely different. It's the same feeling you might experience standing before a magnificent sunset, gazing at the star-filled night sky, or holding a newborn baby. It's wonder mixed with recognition of something infinitely greater than yourself. This divine reverence operates as a purifying fire that burns away the pride and self-importance that naturally accumulate in human consciousness. When you truly grasp the magnitude of divine love, wisdom, and power that surrounds and sustains your existence, any tendency toward arrogance or self-sufficiency simply dissolves. You realize that everything you are, everything you have, and everything you've accomplished exists only because you're held and sustained by an infinite source of life and creativity. The behind-the-scenes impact of this reverent awareness touches every aspect of your life and transforms your entire approach to existence. Your words become more careful because you understand their power. Your actions become more intentional because you recognize their significance. Your relationships deepen because you see divine presence reflected in every person you encounter. This reverence doesn't make you timid or hesitant. Instead, it makes you bold in entirely new ways. When you know you're serving something infinitely greater than your own agenda, you find courage to take steps that your ego never would have risked. When you understand that your life is part of a magnificent divine plan, you discover strength to persevere through challenges that might have defeated you before. This reverent awe operates in a way that completely contradicts our human understanding of fear and authority. Instead of driving you away from God through intimidation or creating distance through terror, this holy reverence actually draws you closer to divine presence because it reveals God not as a harsh taskmaster, but as the ultimate king who rules through love rather than domination. When you truly encounter this divine majesty, you discover that obedience stops being a burden and becomes a joy because you're responding to perfect love rather than arbitrary commands. The cultivation of this profound reverence happens through surprisingly gentle practices that gradually expand your awareness of divine greatness without overwhelming your human capacity to receive such revelation. The practice of contemplating God's magnificence through creation, through the complexity of your own body, through the precision of natural laws, and through the perfect orchestration of circumstances in your life begins to awaken a sense of wonder that naturally generates worship rather than fear. This contemplation transforms your entire perspective on daily life because you begin to recognize that you're constantly surrounded by evidence of divine intelligence and care. The intricate design of a leaf, the perfect timing of a phone call, the unexpected provision that arrives exactly when needed, all of these become windows into divine character that inspire awe rather than anxiety. Your mindset shifts from taking life for granted to living in constant amazement at the generosity and wisdom that sustains your existence. The acknowledgement of your complete dependence on divine grace represents perhaps the most liberating realization you can experience. This isn't humiliating dependence that diminishes your worth, but rather the joyful recognition that you're held, sustained, and loved by an infinite source that never fails. When you truly understand that every breath you take is a gift, every moment of consciousness is grace, and every opportunity for growth is divine provision, gratitude becomes your natural response rather than something you have to manufacture. The practice of praying in stillness creates the inner spaciousness necessary for this reverent awareness to develop and deepen. Unlike anxious prayer that bombards heaven with requests and demands, this contemplative approach involves creating sacred silence and simply basking in divine presence without agenda or expectation. In these moments of quiet communion, something profound happens. You begin to sense the vastness of divine love that surrounds you and the incredible privilege of being invited into intimate relationship with the Creator of all existence. The transformation that occurs through joyful obedience represents the culmination of all these spiritual gifts working together. When wisdom shows you what to see, understanding reveals hidden purposes, counsel provides clear direction, strength sustains you through challenges, knowledge helps you recognize divine presence everywhere, tenderness flows through your relationships, and reverence keeps you connected to divine majesty. Obedience becomes the natural expression of a heart that has been completely won by love. This obedience doesn't feel restrictive or oppressive because it's no longer motivated by fear of punishment or desire for reward. Instead, it emerges from the recognition that divine will always leads toward your highest good and greatest fulfillment. When you understand that God's commands are not arbitrary rules, but loving guidance from someone who sees the entire picture of your life, following that guidance becomes as natural as following the directions of a trusted friend who's helping you navigate to an amazing destination. The behind-the-scenes impact of this reverent obedience touches every decision you make and every relationship you navigate. Your choices become aligned with eternal values rather than temporary circumstances. Your responses to challenges reflect divine character rather than human reactivity. Your presence in difficult situations becomes a channel for divine peace and wisdom rather than just another source of human opinion and emotion. As all of these spiritual gifts mature and integrate within your consciousness, something extraordinary begins to emerge. The recognition that these gifts are not additions to your personality, but expressions of your truest identity. They're not external attachments, but the natural outflow of Christ Himself awakening within you. The profound realization that emerges from experiencing all of these spiritual gifts is that they're not separate abilities being added to your personality from the outside. They're not skills you develop through practice or rewards you earn through good behavior. Instead, they're the natural expressions of something that has always existed within you but has been dormant, waiting for the right conditions to awaken and flourish. This something is what spiritual traditions have called the inner Christ, the divine spark that was planted in every human soul at the moment of creation. This understanding completely revolutionizes your entire approach to spiritual growth and personal transformation. Instead of trying to become someone different or acquire qualities you don't currently possess, you begin to recognize that the journey is about awakening to who you've always been at the deepest level of your being. The wisdom, understanding, divine counsel, spiritual strength, sacred knowledge, celestial tenderness, and reverent awe are not foreign additions to your character. They're the natural expression of your true spiritual identity, beginning to emerge from beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and forgetfulness. The hidden truth behind this awakening process is that Christ is not just a historical figure who lived 2,000 years ago, but a living presence, a divine consciousness, a quality of being that exists as the eternal template for human consciousness. When this presence begins to stir within your soul, when this divine spark ignites into flame, all the gifts we've been exploring start manifesting spontaneously because they're simply different facets of Christ consciousness expressing through your unique personality and circumstances. This shift in understanding transforms your entire relationship with spiritual development. Instead of striving and struggling to become more spiritual, more loving, more wise, you begin to relax into allowing what's already there to surface and express itself. It's like discovering that you've been trying to become a tree when you were already the seed containing the entire tree within your essence, just waiting for the right soil, water, and sunlight to bring forth what was always your destiny. The behind-the-scenes reality of how this awakening occurs is both mysterious and practical. It happens through surrender rather than effort, through recognition rather than achievement, through allowing rather than forcing. Every time you choose love over fear, truth over deception, service over selfishness, you're creating conditions for this divine presence to express more fully through your life. Every moment of genuine prayer, authentic worship, or selfless action becomes an invitation for Christ consciousness to take deeper root in your soul. The transformation that begins to occur when this inner Christ awakens is remarkable because it affects every aspect of your existence simultaneously. Your thoughts begin to align with divine wisdom without conscious effort. Your emotions start reflecting divine love, even in challenging circumstances. Your words carry more weight and impact because they're flowing from a deeper source. Your presence becomes healing to others because something eternal is radiating through your humanity. This doesn't mean you become perfect or stop making mistakes. Instead, it means that your mistakes become opportunities for grace. To demonstrate its power, your weaknesses become places where divine strength can manifest most clearly, and your humanity becomes the perfect vehicle for divine love to touch a world desperate for authentic spiritual expression. The impact of this awakening extends far beyond your personal spiritual experience. When Christ consciousness begins to express through your daily life, you become a bridge between heaven and earth, a living demonstration that the kingdom of God is not just a future hope but a present reality, available to anyone willing to surrender their limited self-concept and allow their true divine nature to emerge. Your relationships transform because you're no longer interacting from ego to ego, but from soul to soul. Your work becomes ministry because you recognize every task as an opportunity to serve the greater good. Your challenges become classrooms because you understand that every difficulty is perfectly designed to develop specific aspects of Christ character. Within you, the journey of spiritual awakening becomes less about improving yourself and more about getting yourself out of the way so that Christ can live your life through you, think your thoughts through you, love others through you, and transform the world through your surrendered humanity. Now I want to reveal the specific obstacles that can prevent this inner awakening and how to overcome them. Write in the comments, "Christ lives in me," if you're beginning to recognize this divine presence as your truest identity. The recognition of Christ consciousness as your true identity naturally brings awareness of what has been blocking this divine presence from expressing more fully through your life. These obstacles aren't external enemies or spiritual forces attacking from outside. They're internal patterns and attitudes that have accumulated over years of living disconnected from your divine nature. Understanding these barriers is crucial because even the most sincere spiritual seekers can find themselves frustrated when their growth seems blocked, despite their best efforts and genuine desire for transformation. Fear operates as perhaps the most pervasive obstacle because it creates exactly the opposite internal environment that divine presence requires to flourish. Where the spirit needs openness, fear creates contraction. Where divine love needs trust, fear generates suspicion. Where spiritual growth needs surrender, fear demands control. This isn't just obvious fears, like being afraid of death or failure. It includes subtle fears that masquerade as wisdom, like the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of looking foolish, or the fear of losing your current identity, even when that identity no longer serves you. The insidious nature of fear as a spiritual obstacle is that it often disguises itself as prudence or protection. You might resist diving deeper into prayer because you're afraid of becoming too religious. You might avoid surrendering certain areas of your life to divine guidance because you're being responsible. But beneath these seemingly rational concerns, fear is actually protecting the ego's illusion of independence and control. Pride represents an even more subtle obstacle because it can actually use spiritual experiences and insights to strengthen the very self-importance that blocks further growth. When you begin to receive divine wisdom or experience spiritual gifts, pride whispers that you're becoming more enlightened than others, more spiritually advanced, more deserving of recognition. This spiritual pride is particularly dangerous because it uses genuine divine experiences to feed the ego's need for superiority. The most challenging obstacle to recognize and address is unconscious resistance, the part of you that genuinely wants to grow spiritually while simultaneously sabotaging that growth through patterns you're not even aware of. You might pray for breakthrough while unconsciously clinging to familiar limitations. You might ask for divine guidance while unconsciously ignoring the guidance you receive because it challenges your preferred outcomes. This resistance manifests in countless subtle ways: procrastination about spiritual practices, distraction during prayer, rationalization of behaviors you know don't align with your spiritual values, or simply allowing busyness to crowd out the stillness necessary for divine communion. The behind-the-scenes impact of this resistance is that it creates internal static that prevents you from clearly receiving or responding to divine communication. The transformation of these obstacles happens not through fighting against them, but through creating the internal conditions where divine presence naturally dissolves what doesn't belong. This brings us to perhaps the most powerful tool for spiritual cleansing and growth: learning to pray in a completely different way than most people approach prayer. Traditional prayer often operates from the assumption that you need to convince God to help you, explain your situation to someone who doesn't understand, or beg for intervention from a distant deity. This approach actually reinforces the very separation and doubt that blocks spiritual growth. Prayer in the Spirit operates on an entirely different principle, entering into vibrational harmony with divine consciousness rather than pleading from a place of disconnection and need. When you pray in the Spirit, you're not trying to bridge a gap between yourself and God because you recognize that no such gap actually exists. Instead, you're aligning your consciousness with divine truth that already encompasses your situation. You're tuning your inner frequency to match the divine frequency that already contains the answer to every question. the solution to every problem, and the fulfillment of every legitimate need. This shift in how you approach prayer changes everything about your spiritual journey because it moves you from petition to participation, from begging to declaring, from hoping to knowing. When you pray from spiritual alignment rather than human desperation, you're actually cooperating with divine will rather than trying to change it. Now, I want to show you exactly how this alignment occurs and why it's so much more powerful than conventional approaches to prayer. Write in the comments, "I align with divine truth," if you're ready to move from begging in prayer to entering into harmony with God's perfect will. This alignment with divine truth naturally leads to something extraordinary in your daily life. The ability to live according to what could be described as inner breath, where your actions flow from divine inspiration rather than human impulse or conditioned habit. This represents a fundamental shift in how you navigate decisions, relationships, and opportunities because you're no longer operating primarily from your own limited perspective and reactive patterns. When you're truly aligned with divine consciousness through prayer in the Spirit, you begin to sense a gentle but unmistakable inner current that guides your responses to life situations. This isn't about hearing audible voices or receiving dramatic supernatural interventions. Instead, it's about developing sensitivity to a divine rhythm that flows through your consciousness when you're spiritually attuned, offering direction that transcends your own analysis and planning. This inspired action creates a quality of life that feels both effortless and purposeful because you're cooperating with divine energy rather than trying to force outcomes through human effort alone. Your words carry more impact because they're emerging from a deeper source. Your timing becomes more precise because you're sensing divine kairos rather than just managing chronological time. Your responses to challenges become more creative and effective because you're accessing wisdom that goes beyond your personal experience and knowledge. The journey toward living from this place of inspired action isn't always smooth or comfortable, and understanding this is crucial for anyone serious about spiritual growth. Every authentic spiritual path includes seasons of testing and purification that can feel like spiritual darkness or divine abandonment. These trials aren't signs that something has gone wrong with your spiritual development. They're actually indications that something profound is going right. The hidden truth about spiritual trials is that they serve as the necessary fires that burn away everything in your consciousness that isn't aligned with your divine nature. Just as gold must pass through intense heat to be purified of impurities, your soul must sometimes pass through seasons of difficulty, confusion, or apparent spiritual dryness to be cleansed of the ego patterns and false securities that would otherwise limit your spiritual growth. These dark nights of the soul, as mystics have called them, often arrive precisely when you think your spiritual life is progressing beautifully. You might find that prayer suddenly feels empty, that the sense of divine presence seems to have withdrawn, that circumstances become more challenging despite your growing devotion. During these seasons, it's tempting to conclude that you've done something wrong or that God has abandoned you, but the opposite is actually true. These purifying trials are evidence that divine love is working so deeply in your soul that surface consolations are temporarily withdrawn to develop your capacity to trust and surrender at much deeper levels. The gifts of wisdom, understanding, counsel, strength, knowledge, tenderness, and reverence that you've been developing are being tested and strengthened through the crucible of difficulty. The behind-the-scenes purpose of these spiritual trials is to mature your faith from dependence on feelings and external confirmations to unshakable trust in divine goodness. Regardless of circumstances, when you can maintain connection to divine love, even when you can't feel it, when you can continue serving, even when you receive no recognition, when you can keep praying even when heaven seems silent, you're developing the kind of spiritual strength that becomes unshakable. The transformation that occurs through successfully navigating these seasons of testing produces what Scripture calls the fruit of the Spirit, qualities that emerge not through human effort, but as natural expressions of souls where God has made his dwelling. This fruit manifests as love that doesn't depend on receiving love in return, joy that doesn't depend on external circumstances, and peace that doesn't depend on having everything figured out. These aren't emotions you manufacture or attitudes you adopt. They're the spontaneous overflow of a consciousness that has been thoroughly saturated with divine presence. When your soul has been purified through trials and aligned through prayer, when Christ consciousness has awakened within you and the gifts of the Spirit are flowing through your life, something beautiful begins to radiate from your very being without any conscious effort on your part. This divine fruit represents the ultimate evidence that everything we've explored together isn't just beautiful theory or inspiring concepts. It's the lived reality that becomes available when you genuinely open your heart to the transformative presence of the Holy Spirit. When love, joy, and peace begin radiating from your life as natural expressions rather than forced behaviors, you know that something eternal has taken root within you. The journey we've taken together through these profound spiritual realities, from recognizing the divine longing within your soul to understanding how Christ consciousness awakens through you, represents more than information. It's an invitation into a completely different way of existing, where every day becomes an opportunity to experience and express divine presence through your unique humanity. If you've stayed with me through this entire exploration, there's something stirring in your soul that recognizes the truth of what we've discussed. You're not here by accident. This message has found you at exactly the right moment in your spiritual journey, and that inner resonance you're feeling is the Holy Spirit confirming that these realities are meant to become living experiences in your life. I create content like this because I believe deeply that the world needs people who are willing to awaken to their divine nature and allow Christ consciousness to express through their daily lives. If this resonates with you, if you want to continue receiving insights that support your spiritual transformation, I'd love to have you subscribe to this channel. Every video is designed to offer practical wisdom for living from your highest spiritual potential. Leave a comment below saying, "This message was meant for me," if you feel that divine timing brought you to this teaching. I read every comment, and I'm always encouraged to know when these truths are landing in hearts that are ready to receive them. If this content has touched something deep within you, a simple like tells me that we're connecting on this spiritual frequency and encourages me to continue sharing what I receive in prayer and meditation. The beautiful thing about spiritual awakening is that it's not a destination, but an ongoing journey of deeper surrender and greater expression of divine love. There's a video right here that explores how to maintain this connection to divine presence even during your busiest, most challenging days. Click and continue with me over there. I think you'll find it's exactly what your soul needs to hear next. Remember, you carry within you everything necessary to reflect divine perfection in your daily life. Trust that inner knowing and let it guide you into the extraordinary life you were created to live.